don't, I cannot understand that we have some people who can do what they like, as if the state has become their private ownership, and the people will not react. So we need to sensitize them, and I think that using that right is not a revolution. It is another way of talking of revolution, but it is the exercise of a particular right consecrated and recognized by the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Thank you. That's the precision I wanted to do before you
Thank
continue.
you.
Absolutely.
We would
Thank you
just
for that
like
development.
to speed a little bit because we are caught by the time, and we really believe that it is more important to look to the future, to move forward with our heads held high and build the next chapter. Donc, merci à nos experts et responsables pour ces éclairages. On a compris une chose essentielle. Comment est-ce qu'on rassure et on remobilise les militants après cette décision, alors que beaucoup sont justement découragés, hein, parce que, comme on l'a dit, comme le disait Maître Emmanuel Sim, l'état de droit semble inexistant.
I think Trump does have a few. He's not without any kind of leverage. He could say, listen, we want this war to be over too. We want to get back to a normalized relationship because however this war is concluded, Russia's still going to exist. Europe is still going to exist. We're still going to exist. We have to live together. We got to figure some ways out. We have the New START treaty, which is going to expire in February of this year. We need to work on that. We obviously the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty has expired already. Now Russia's saying they're no longer abiding by it. So that's not good. We need to try to put that back together somehow because we've got to look beyond this war. And Trump can say, hey, listen, we can talk about maybe releasing some sanctions and to normalize relations in exchange for there won't be much because Russia just Putin himself can't just give away some of this territory here because he's already incorporated it into their constitution, and he would face a revolt at home if he actually gave that stuff away because then he would make his word no good to ethnic Russians who are banking on him doing what he wants here. So Putin himself is limited here, and Trump as well is what he can get. But I think that if you can just say, hey, let's just get the war over with so the bleeding stops, the destruction of Ukraine stops, and everybody can at least start the very difficult and painful process of recovering from all this that everybody's going to have to do so that we don't have the risk of an expanded war, which is still on the table.
What are the risks for Putin in going there? You and I both know, but it's not widely known. It's certainly not widely reported that there are many people in Russia, some of them in the Kremlin itself, who think that Putin has treated this whole thing with far too thick velvet glove, that he should have ended it long before now and could have ended it long before now. If Putin were to make major concessions, what would the impact of those be?
Well, I mean, truly, and I've had a number of folks even on my show talk about this and some of the sources that I've pinged from the Russian side, and they say they think that this whole issue of talking to, first of all, to Witkoff last week and then to Trump here in Alaska probably is some sort of like 3D chess move by Putin, or at least they say it better be, because if what's being reported turned out to be true and he gave away territory that they have the power to not just hold on to, but continue to take more, there would be a great deal of anger among many sources inside of Russia. And I can't say with any confidence that that would literally turn into a revolt, but you can't dismiss that because it would make people really, really angry at Putin. And I just don't see any reason, given everything he said from before the war all the way back to 2008. And then he would suddenly change course at the last one when, as you pointed out there, the fabric of the Ukrainian army is starting to shatter. There is no reason for him to give in to anything now. So anybody who's hoping he's going to, I think it's going to be disappointed.
Well, what happens if disappointment is the result? Trump has got the European, I'm going to call them leaders in inverted commas, yapping at his heels like chihuahuas. He's got little Zelensky, less than a chihuahua. What's less than a chihuahua? A sausage dog, a Dachshund. Barking in the sidelines. Is Trump taking any risks here?
Well, listen, I think that this can best be illustrated by something in the Telegraph today. Maybe you saw it. It said that Trump betrays Ukraine. And I'll just tell you that when I read that, it actually made me angry. I was hot because what these guys doing, and this represents the elite thinking in both London and Washington and really all over Europe, is that all of this is Donald Trump's fault. Donald Trump is the bad guy. Sure, Putin's bad too, but Trump is the real bad guy because everything was set up and we were doing everything to help Ukraine win, and now he's coming, maybe going to give it away. Oblivious to the fact that we're only in this problem right now because the Western elite refused to make the diplomatic moves necessary to prevent this from starting war in the first place, going all the way back to Minsk, really going all the way back to 2014 and how we participated in the civil war that broke out in Ukraine, then the Minsk, then December 2021, and of course the famous one in Istanbul in 2022, and all the way forward. Every diplomatic off-ramp we've had, we refused. Instead, all we wanted to talk about was more war, more arms, more ammunition, and continue fighting. So we are in this process right now where Trump, who is the only one talking about ending the war, the only one in the West, he may, quote, give away something to Ukraine, to Russia, but he's not giving away anything. Russia took it because of our unwillingness to do anything that was rational and logical and could have ended the war and benefited all of us, or at least limited the damage in Ukraine, but benefited the rest of the Western world. We refused to do that, and now we're trying to blame it on Trump for conceding to reality here. And that's the big problem, is that we have that mentality that we can do anything we want. There's never any kind of consequences or results. And now that we see that that spin only works on TV, it doesn't work in reality. And now then we may, if we keep that mentality, we could be getting in even more trouble after this thing is resolved, however it is, because if we keep on pretending like we need to keep supporting war against Russia, now that they have won, we need to get ready for another war, then we could be setting ourselves up for literal destruction.
Now, Colonel, paint us some color, will you? I know the predominant color in Alaska is probably white, but paint us a picture of what's going to be happening on the 15th. I mean, does Alaska have a place that you can
it's Russia and the United States are close at certain points, just across I think the Bering Straits is what it is in between the two countries.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of that goes, yeah, it's logistically, it's still going to be hard because you're talking about throwing this whole thing together in a week, and that's really hard when you're talking about two of the biggest heads of state on the planet, two of the biggest nuclear superpowers. So it's going to be some logistics challenges, but all those things can be worked out. The real issue is going to be, what happens on the ground between the two. And like I said, I think that most of the cards are in Putin's hands, so we'll see how that works out.
Do you think it'll be a one-day thing, or is there somewhere there? I presume there's hotels there, forgive my ignorance, but how can you accommodate two such high-value targets in a place like Alaska if the thing stretches into a second day, maybe even a third day?
Yeah, we've actually had big summits. Especially the conflict, their staffs have already worked out nearly everything, and the heads of state are just going to do the final, nuances. But here, virtually nothing's been agreed to. Just one meeting with Steve Witkoff prior to this, and now there's no time in between, and most of the action is just the logistics getting together. So I doubt this will go more than a day, and maybe even just a few hours. thinks that his force of personality is going to sway Putin to do something that Trump wants him to do, that's maybe against some of his Putin's self-interest. You have Trump saying that he ended 6 wars, and he had Armenia and Azerbaijan the other day. So I think that he believes that he can get things done that nobody else can. He kind of bragged on himself about the Armenia and Azerbaijan. So regardless of what anybody else thinks, he thinks that he brought that together. And I think he's bringing that same mentality into here. And this is not the same situation. So I hope he doesn't think that. That piece in the Telegraph I referenced earlier, you have a lot of the Democrats are saying, you're betraying Ukraine, you're just giving things away, you're just handing on a silver platter over to Russia, etc. So I mean, it's just the narrative. It's not really based on reality.
Russia, Russia, Russia. Colonel Davis, thank you very much indeed for joining us again on the mother of all talk shows, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis, host of the unmissable, actually, Daniel Davis Deep Dive. Let me take a quick break. Then it's your calls right up to Gayatri's social media roundup. Stay tuned. There's a legend on the line in Oklahoma. It's me on Trump. Welcome back, me.
Trump is using a magic 8-ball to make his decisions. He apparently has completely lost whatever mind he had to begin with. This is just ridiculous. Does he really think anyone's going to believe that? I'm here to say, and I'm here to join you and everybody else, the emperor has no clothes on. He's as naked as they come. And unfortunately, I'm pretty sure he got naked with some young people. And that is why he so desperately is trying to kill this whole Epstein thing. And he's just making it worse.
I'm wondering when Donald Trump knew that he was implicated in these Epstein files and what it was that he knew. That's the big question, because he wouldn't have been banging the Epstein drum all this time and then suddenly to pull the rug. That tells me that it was a late decision, that someone came late to Trump to say, you really don't want to be doing that.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Will Netanyahu annex Gaza into Greater Israel, yes or no? You've got exactly 20 minutes left to vote. On Telegram, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. Most people, I'm bound to say, think that Netanyahu will annex Gaza into Greater Israel. I myself don't believe that he'll be able to, but don't let that influence how you vote. Let's go down under where, well, it's tomorrow morning already, and very early tomorrow morning, where Hanan in Sydney wants to talk about the Sydney rally. Go ahead, Hanan. It was very impressive on the bridge. Looked to be 100,000 people there or more. And although the elements conspired, it was heavy rain and very cold, not what we tend to associate with Australia. It was a magnificent turnout. Were you there?
Hi, good morning, George. Thank you for having my call. Yeah, I would like to talk about the rally. Actually, the number is more than that. It was, in my opinion, more than 300,000. The harbor bridge was completely full. Like the people who started the rally, we support the rally to go to the embassy at the American Council in Sydney.
Hanan, hold your phone up and close to your mouth, please.
Hello.
No, we'll need to fix that. I'll need to go on to Bermuda, where the weather's very much nicer. Rolf is in Bermuda on Palestine and the Ukraine. Go ahead, Rolf.
Hi, George. It's good to be with you again.
And you.
As to Ukraine, George, I just think that the game is up. You know, the neocons want to have their own way over there. They are just determined to have endless war. We know that the Anglo-American elite and the German counterparts they believe in the zero-sum game. You cannot have a win-win with them. They win and you lose. And those wars are going to continue to go on. Just moving on to Gaza, if I may, George, I just want to say this.
Yeah.
We talked about the MOATS fella, and I love the way that the moral courage he showed. And you're right about the way he framed that question to the football authorities. You know, but I'm thinking of another young boy, or a young boy in this case, the young fella Amir. You know, you have that whistleblower who actually resigned from masquerading as an aid worker, when in fact it's a mercenary group that is distributing that aid. And they seem to take just as much delight in shooting innocent Palestinian civilians as the IDF. Well, you have the story. I mean, this was just so heartbreaking. This young fellow Amir, he looked no more than 5 or 6. He walked for miles to get to this death queue, I would call it, I guess, to pick up a few items of food. He probably hadn't eaten in maybe days. He ended up shaking the whistleblower's hand as a measure of respect.
He kissed
and
it.
As a measure of saying thank
you. He kissed
you.
the hand.
Only then to walk away.
He kissed his hand. Yeah.
Kissed his hand, that's right. He kissed his hand and then only to walk away, and then they fired a tank shell in the direction of where he ended up amongst a group, and he was killed. Again, this is what's going on here. And so again, George, I can't hear you. I'm just saying, again, we have the fact that the Germans now are saying they are not going to, they're going to also recognize a Palestinian state. But the reality is, I didn't hear them say that they were going to stop supplying weapons to Israel. Many people may not know this, but they're the second largest purveyor of weapons to Israel. The reality is that this is round 3 for Germany. You had a genocide in German Southwest Africa, now called Namibia, at the turn of the 19th century into the 20th century. Number 2 was what happened in terms of World War II. And number three is now their complicity in the genocide in Gaza. Yet they still will not call for an end of the war. As to Keir Starmer, I call him the duplicitous one, the perfidious one. He went and outsourced the overflights over Gaza to a private American contractor, yet did not tell the public that they were doing so. That is a height of what we're facing here.
Yeah, he didn't. He didn't tell the public.
These people are war criminals.
He didn't tell the public, Rolf. He didn't tell the public that he'd started, and he didn't tell the public that he'd finished. He never revealed to the public. In fact, on Christmas Day, you may recall, he was filmed using our gallant airmen and women as a photo op. He thanked them for the work that we cannot talk about. What kind of democracy has its armed forces doing work that we cannot talk about? But as you say, under the real threat of having to face the legal music, eventually, he's now stopped doing it and has subcontracted it. We, the British, are paying an American mercenary company to conduct the overflights of Gaza that we ourselves, through our Royal Air Force, were previously doing, with the public and the Parliament not consulted about either decision. Rolf, great call. We're definitely coming out to see you in Sandy Lane as soon as we can. Now, tonight's big donors, bristling with new names, I may say, and I'm deeply grateful for that. A big shout out to Jonathan Hughes, Kenneth Morris, Shabir, Paul Brannan, and David Waltham. You get your name on to the Wall of Fame. If you want to join them, head over to MOATS.tv and make a donation, please. Now, on a better line is our good friend from down under in Sydney, where it's a winter's morning. Hanan, welcome back. You had told us that you thought the attendance was very much greater than the figure I gave. So tell us what kind of people were on that rally and what impact has it made on Australian public opinion, Australian politicians?
George, the number was more than that. First, police, they said, they announced on TV at the first time, they said 10,000. Then they said 90,000. In my opinion, was more than 300,000 because not people, the bridge was completely full and the rally was supposed to go to American Council building in Sydney. But then because of the huge number, police asked, they said for safety to go back and everybody to go back from the point that we started. So there was also numbers of people which they didn't start the rally yet. They didn't. They didn't
start
pass
marching.
the bridge yet. Exactly. They were left behind, and because people, we all began to go back. So that's all those people. No one accounted them. So that's why, in my opinion, was more than 300,000, and I'm so happy that we did the rally. The rally was so beautiful. It was very, very cold, very rain, but people in Sydney, everybody wants, like who attend the rally, we just said, we want to say that we are against genocide against what is happening to Gaza. And and
what impact has it made, Hanan?
You know, for me, I every week, almost every week, we go and rally, but not as big as this one, but nearly for 2 years. I ask myself, what is this? Can do something? My answer to myself, I'm happy to do whatever I can do. If I can say, if my voice will say, it will reach to anyone or to wake up anyone that there is something, there is genocide happening in Gaza, then I'm happy to do it. Yeah, and I hope the politics in Sydney, they will hear what Sydney people want. I think, in my opinion, the government in Sydney, somehow they supporting Israel. Even they tried not to let the rally go ahead. But through the Supreme Court, the organizer, they won the case. So if we can say to the government that that's what Sydney people want. We want ceasefire. We want peace. We want what's happening in the killing in Gaza to stop killing kids, stop killing women.
Well, that's a very beautiful call, Hanan. And may God bless your efforts and reward them. We never know what impact our action will have. I always put it this way. It's my duty as a believer to do everything that is in my power to do. And even if I happen to persuade no one, at least on the judgment day, it will be known that I did indeed do everything that I could to stop this very, very great time. This crime of the century, a crime perhaps of the last 100 years, certainly the last 75. Thanks for that, Hanan. Antonio Cristoforo says, Putin will, I fear, be having breakfast in America as a hostage, facing a kangaroo court. Super Trump will parade him in chains behind bars in Washington, with jester Zelensky poking him with a stick. Well, if that happens, Antonio, we won't be around to see it, because World War III will have commenced. And Sammy Gitt says President Maduro offering $50 million for unreleased Epstein files in response to Trump's earlier announcement of $50 million bounty for Maduro's capture was brilliant. It was indeed. Citrus One says Putin going to Alaska is foolish. He's taking a big risk with his safety for a very uncertain benefit to Russia. And KSN 641 says Putin is peed off with Azerbaijan and Turkey. That's why he agreed to meet in Alaska rather than Istanbul. Personally, I think he's making a big mistake going to Alaska. Istanbul, Turkey is the safest. I must ask Atri later what all this Turkey business is about. Is this a bit like Kiev? It's Turkey to me. Mick DB2 says Putin will let Trump play his hand. Russia knows that the US wants to leave the EU and the UK to carry on the war of attrition while the US sorts out China. Okay, from Washington, D.C., we've got the big Amish. That's his name. And he wants to talk about Putin and Trump. Go ahead, Amish.
Hi there, George. I'm a first-time caller. Yeah, I do want to talk about Putin and Trump. Number one, if the war is resolved, his adversaries would clearly not relish that. They would be disappointed, and they would use that and promote the Russian puppet theory again. But for the rest of us, I do believe resolving a war of such magnitude is in everyone's interest at a reasonable level as a common man. Sure. It resolves, and they could go on to other problems. But here's the key to this. Potentially, here's a what if for you, George. And if you agree, I want you to give me a hat salute. What if during these discussions that Putin happens to provide information regarding Obama, Joe Biden, and Hunter Biden's involvement in Ukraine? And to further that even further, what if Snowden is transferred to Trump? What would that do? Would that be the death knell to his adversaries? I want to hear what you think.
Well, let me give you the hat tip, because those are two very interesting hypotheses. I think the first is far more likely than the second. In fact, I'd be surprised if the Russians had not passed all the compromise that they have on the totally corrupt relationship that lasted for a decade between the democratic establishment, either directly or indirectly, through their sons, through their daughters, with the corrupt regime in Kiev, the most corrupt country in Europe, had the sons and daughters of almost all of the top American politicians in their country doing business. And if that doesn't automatically make you suspicious, then I think you're making a mistake. And the truth is, the Russians will know all about that. They will know who took what, who earned what, or rather, who stole what from the whole American-Ukraine experience. Hunter Biden himself is getting close to some very powerful actors with some of the things that he has been saying over the last few days. So the possibility of CDs being handed over to Donald Trump, which help him to destroy his domestic enemies, is a very tantalizing possibility. Personally, I very much hope that he does. Putin will never hand over Snowden unless Snowden wants to be handed over, and unless Trump is willing to pardon him. So the Russians never betrayed their friends. Their whole history shows that. Unlike us, we betray our friends and forget their names before they've even counted the money they took out in the black plastic bin bags. We no longer remember who they are. Who's the last president of Afghanistan, I ask you? But the Russians never leave anybody behind, and they never betrayed their friends. So I'm sure that they will not be handing over Snowden against his will, but Snowden himself is the repository of vast treasure troves of intelligence. That much is for sure. Now, look, big news on Rumble. If you're watching on Rumble right now, a big thanks to Space Shot 76, who just raided our stream. It's a new feature. This means that he brought his viewers on his channel to the MOATS live stream tonight. That all went above my head, but you younger people will know exactly what our director is talking about. Welcome to all of Space Shot's viewers. If you've just joined us, please click subscribe and like the stream. Terry is in Massachusetts. He wants to talk about Putin and Trump too. Welcome, Terry. What do you want to say?
George, it is a great honor to speak with you. I have a comment to make about this summit coming up. This could be the shortest meeting, shorter than the Sonny Liston Cassius Clay fight. With one question Putin has to answer, has to ask Donald Trump. All he has to say is, if Canada and Mexico were hostile to the United States, and Russia were supplying them with weapons, what would you do? And if he cannot answer that, that meeting is over, George. So to borrow a phrase from the great George Galloway, what say you?
Well, how beautiful, Terry, and my apologies for misgendering you. My people normally put up when it's a female with a name that could be male. So my apologies for that. And it's a beautiful call, and it was over almost as fast as the Sonny Liston, Cassius Clay, as he then was, fight. It would be a delight to see that flooring. It would be an epiphany to see Trump floored by that. But I think that what you'll find is that it will not be over that quick. It'll be more like the long 15 round of diplomatic attrition, because Trump cannot afford to be seen to have, quote unquote, capitulated quickly. They'll have to produce a lot of detail so that the underlying question of who won, who lost will not be so immediately apparent. It will have to be wrapped up in all kinds of conditionalities. If you do this, I'll do that. I think the one certainty, Terry, is that there will be an air ceasefire. So no more bombing raids, no more drones, no more missiles fired to or from each other's territory. But that will not stop the land war. And in the land war, Russia is prevailing very, very rapidly now. As I said, just this day, by 7 o'clock this evening when I came on air, Russia had advanced 7 kilometers. Now, that's a long way in the middle of a war to advance through the enemy's front line. So I don't think it will be over as quick as List and Ali. It may be that Putin will have to, as he did, I think, to Ernie Terrell, keep him standing up, keep Trump standing up for as long as possible, even though he could put him down. But I'm very much hoping, Terry, that this ends on the 15th of August, not just so I can celebrate it in my birthday the next day. Beautiful call. Terry in Massachusetts. Mo in Ottawa wants to talk about Palestine. Go ahead, Mo.
Hi. I saw previously that you endorsed a one-state solution. And while I think that would be like the best case scenario, I'm not sure if it's like realistic. And even if it is realistic, I think it would require more suffering from the Palestinians than a two-state solution would.
Well, when is this two-state solution coming along?
Yeah, it's probably not realistic either. But in terms of like a comparison, I think that it would still be more realistic than.
Well, if there's two, yeah, if there's two things that are equally unrealistic, why fight for the one that doesn't solve anything anyway? Why fight for the one that we have been waiting for since 1993? It was signed, the Oslo agreements were signed in 1993. It's now 2025. An ocean of blood has been shed between then and now, and not 1 centimeter of Palestine is free. So why keep flogging a dead horse, Mo? If you show me a two-state solution, show it to me, I'll take my hat off and congratulate you. But until you can show me it, until you've got it, why do you want me to stop campaigning for the thing that is not only right in principle, as you yourself just acknowledged, but actually is a solution, as opposed to the so-called two-state solution, which hasn't happened, won't happen, and isn't a solution at all. Last word to you, Mo.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but it is the best case scenario. But like, I think it would probably require more suffering from the Palestinians than a two-state solution would.
Well, but the Palestinians are suffering, and they are getting no two-state solution. You know, when people tell you what they are, you should believe them. The Israeli parliament voted last week to annex the West Bank. The governing Likud coalition, one permutation or other of which will govern Israel in the long foreseeable future. No alternative political coalition, other than that, is remotely feasible or visible, they have made it plain there will be no two-state solution. I mean, why persist in something when the other party tells you it's never going to happen and is meanwhile paving the entire territory that was supposed to be the Palestinian state with new Israeli settlements, new highways, new fortresses, new walls, new barbed wire. I mean, at what point do you say, I'm flogging a dead horse here with this two-state solution, which isn't even a solution for all the reasons you know, and I don't have time to go back over. I'll deal with only one. There are more Palestinians living in exile, you may be one of them, than there are living in Palestine. And the two-state solution does not allow, indeed specifically precludes, the right of Palestinian refugees in exile to return to their homes. So we say, from the river to the sea, Palestine should be free, where one man, one woman, one child live as an equal, one as the other, under the law, under a negotiated constitution, and where one man, one woman, one vote decides the political direction of that new single state. So we've got a broadcast coming up, Mo. Myself, my friend Yvonne Ridley, who was with me today discussing the upcoming Scottish elections, in which she is our lead candidate, and other speakers. We are recording on Thursday. I don't know if it's live, but I'm sure we've got a flyer somewhere, or maybe Gayatri can elucidate. Thank you, Mo, in Ottawa, for that call. You got my blood going, son. Gayatri is in the studio with the social media news roundup. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Well, let's start with Turkey, or Turkey, which I've been telling you was an anti-Orientalist approach by many of our comrades who like to call it as the country itself prefers. And it is indeed the case that in 2022, the foreign minister of Turkey requested and submitted to the UN, and has since been ratified, for their name to be not Turkey, but Türkiye. And it was part of a rebranding campaign to bring Turkey in a better light, represent its country's values and culture better, rather than have the negative connotation of the English word Turkey, which means a big chicken.
Okay, you persuaded me, I
go.
suppose, but I'm one of the last men still calling it Bombay and Calcutta. So maybe it's my age.
I also still call it Turkey, sorry. Emails then. One from Peter in Bedford, UK. I never knew Alaska was only 2.5 miles away from Russia. So maybe the former governor, Sarah Palin, was onto something when she supposedly said she could see Russia all the way from her house.
She was right.
Yeah, she was right.
She was unfairly ridiculed over that. On a clear day, you can.
Exactly.
But she claimed they were looking in our window. I think that was the point.
Well, maybe that part she exaggerated. But other than that, well, 2.5 miles. There you go. This Peter, by the way, is a Tory voter, and therefore doesn't share all your politics, but appreciates the show. He says,
"Thank you.
The guests on your shows are always thought-provoking and challenge my worldview, and I find that it's a better way to be open-minded." So that's wonderful. Alan in Wigan says, "Love the jacket, George. I chose it, Alan. Do you like it?"
My wife turns me out well, Alan, yeah?
I fear that Zelensky and the collective West are planning something, maybe a false flag before the Alaska meeting on Friday. These people are insane. Anything to derail any chance of a peaceful resolution. This conflict will end on Putin's terms only.
Well, I mean, it can't be dressed up that way. Trump will have to get something, or he will put himself in quite serious domestic trouble. I've given you an idea. Why don't they announce a peace bridge to be built across the Bering Straits, linking Russia to the United States of America? Would that not be a great thing?
Groundbreaking. As groundbreaking as when President Donald Trump at the time went to the DMZ zone to meet Kim Jong-un.
The little rocket man.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I mean, fair play to Trump. I mean, I don't know how this is going to work out, and I might have egg on my face come the 16th. But I think he's taking risks doing this. Dan Davis agreed with me. I think he's taking a risk, and fair play to him. If he pulls it off, he might just get that Nobel Peace Prize after all, or the Nobel War Prize anyway.
So the poll tonight, will Netanyahu annex Gaza into Greater Israel? Camille Wulanin says whether Israel calls Gaza annexed or under security control, the reality is identical. No sovereignty, total external rule. The distinction is a legal fig leaf. De jure annexation is just paperwork. The harm, the illegality, and the apartheid are already there. Norse Renegade says it's about stealing the trillions of cubic feet of natural gas in Gaza Marine. The US and the EU are desperate to get control before the winter sets in. The German economy will break if they don't have a cheap supply of gas. I guess blowing up the Nord Stream wasn't such a good idea, was it?
Well, fair point.
Yeah.
I mean, you know my views on this gas issue. There's no way it's going to be heating your home this winter. It's not even properly explored, never mind exploited. And any oil company stealing the gas from an illegal occupation, because it will always be an illegal occupation. This is something that some people miss. Because of the Chinese and Russian veto in the Security Council, the actual status of Gaza as illegally occupied will never change. Russia and China will never agree to lift that classification. And any oil company would be open to court action in their own countries from their own citizens if they were harvesting the gas of that's enriching the illegal occupier of a country. That would be illegal not just under international law, but under their own domestic law. So I don't believe that the gas will be warming anyone's toes in Western households anytime soon.
So C. Celestius then says, those who imagine Gaza's futures lies in neat annexation misunderstands both Netanyahu and the realities on the ground. Israel's prime minister, he thrives on managing crises rather than resolving them. A permanent low-grade conflict that keeps his coalition glued together and his rivals off balance. Now, a full annexation would saddle Israel with direct responsibility of 2 million embittered residents, a burden that Netanyahu has no desire to carry. Far more useful politically is a Gaza that remains a problem to be contained, a threat to be invoked, and a bargaining chip to be played.
What a clever message.
Yeah,
Who was that from?
So this is from C. Celestius.
Very, very
it's
good.
a very, it's exactly, actually, if you zoom out, then that's exactly the picture. He just has to manage the crisis and remain in power. Smart User says, who is going to stop Netanyahu? Most politicians in Western democracies are either bribed or blackmailed. Now, I wanted to tap on his democracies bit because we were at the International Forum on Democracy about 2 years ago in China. Yes, China. Yes, we all know China is ruled by the one Communist Party, but they host this huge international event on democracy, shared values. And people the haters love painting China as some kind of dictatorship where the citizens have no freedom or no say. But the opposite is the truth, actually, because they've got a 5-year plan, which is like a socialist method of planning for national goals and economic growth. And this year, in preparation for the next 5 years, they launched this online consultation campaign, which meant that all the Chinese citizens could submit online suggestions for the next 5-year plan. And guess what? The results of this 1-month campaign are in, and over 3.11 million suggestions have been submitted directly from the Chinese to the government. And they go from little things like smoking on the streets, secondhand smoking, because it's a big problem in China, lots of people smoke, to food security and, you know, tracing where their food on the table comes from. It's incredible. So you want to talk about democracy? Isn't this, as Xi Jinping says, a vivid example of a whole process, people's democracy?
Yeah, I mean, it's a different kind of democracy. I'm not fighting for it here. I want socialism in British characteristics here. But the Chinese like it. Why wouldn't they? They have transformed their lives under this people's democracy in a way incomparable to any point in human history. 800 million people have been lifted out of poverty in the last 45 years. And China's economy, people say socialism doesn't work. I always say, have you seen China lately? And have you compared it to your own city center, to your own job center, to your own homelessness and all the other metrics by which it is plain, even to that blind man in the wheelchair, that the finest of the Metropolitan Police carted off yesterday. Look, I've got to cut you short, Gayatri, because there's a legend on the line. It is Erebos in New York, on Lebanon. I told you this is the global university of the airwaves. Last word to you, Erebos.
Greetings and salutations, and a salubrious day, late evening, whatever time it is that you happen to be at. Wonderful shout out to the clan Galloway, and of course the MOATS staff, the most wonderful Jaya, and special shout out to Mrs. Gayatri Galloway in her Disney Princess Royal Burgundy. You know, I could picture a crown on her head, but I'll suffice for the nimbus glow from a melanated complexion there, just magnificent. Just 3 quick bullet points. What's less than a chihuahua? Well, if you think about Cerberus, the 3-headed dog in Hades that guards, that guards hell, basically the Greek hell, and you think about the Baltic states, they're like a teacup chihuahua with 3 heads, right? It's a mini teacup Cerberus. And we had this phenomenon here. I don't know if they had it over there in the UK or wherever. It might have been 12 years ago or so, where we have the muscle queens. So these are big, muscular gay guys that carry these tiny little rat-looking dogs, these little teacup chihuahuas. It was quite something to look at. Very, very hilarious. On a different thing, MOATS episode number 1 has been coming up in my